My family called me stingy after I gave them $70,000 to save them, but when I discovered my father lied to me for 28 years about who I am, I canceled the new car, took my grandma and her inheritance, and left them with nothing. I'm 28 years old. I work in financial consulting, and honestly, I need to get this off my chest because what happened a few months ago basically destroyed any relationship I had with my family. And you know what? I don't regret it at all. I guess I should start from the beginning, when everything seemed normal. Or at least what I considered normal at the time. I grew up in a family that always had money problems. Like there was always this tension in the air about bills and expenses. But I never thought it was that serious, you know? My mom was the dramatic type, always exaggerating things. So when she complained about money, I thought she was just being herself. My dad, Michael, like 56 years old now, I think, worked in construction and did what he could. But with 4 kids, things were always tight. My siblings are Jessica, the oldest, like 32 years old, Brandon, who's 30, and Emily, the baby of the family at 22. I'm in the middle, you know, the sandwich kid, and I was always the one who tried hardest in school and career because I saw how my parents struggled and didn't want to end up like that. The thing is, I worked like crazy for years, since I was 16 doing part-time jobs. Then in college, I worked and studied at the same time. No social life or anything, just focused on getting ahead. Meanwhile, Jessica got married young and divorced within a year. Brandon was studying something in graphic design but never finished it and kept living at home. And Emily, well, she was at least still in college. I moved out as soon as I could, got a decent job in consulting, and started saving like obsessively. Like every penny I had left over went straight to my savings account because I had this irrational fear of ending up in the same situation as my parents. Everything changed like 8 months ago when my mom called me crying. And when I say crying, I mean that desperate sobbing that breaks your heart. She tells me the family is drowning in debt, that they have like $70,000 total between the overdue mortgage, credit cards, personal loans, basically everything you can imagine. The bank was going to take the house in 2 months if they didn't pay, and she was completely destroyed. I remember I was in my office when I got that call and I had to run to the bathroom because I couldn't process what I was hearing. $70,000. $70,000? How the hell had they gotten to that point? My mom explained between sobs that things had been piling up, that Dad had less work the last 2 years, that they'd had medical expenses with my grandma, my dad's mom, who lived with them, and that basically they'd been using one credit card to pay another. Classic, right? And there I was, standing in my office bathroom thinking, okay, Sophie, you have exactly $73,000 in your savings account. That's literally 6 years of your life saving every penny. And your family is about to lose their house. I'm not going to lie. It took me like a week to think about it. A whole week, where I basically didn't sleep, just calculated numbers in my head over and over. That $70,000 was my safety net, my emergency plan, my future. I had planned to use part of that money for a down payment on my own apartment eventually. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mom crying. My dad, with that defeated look I'd never seen on him. My siblings potentially on the street. And my grandma, who was already elderly and didn't deserve to go through that. So I did it. I took out the full $70,000 from my account, leaving myself with only $3,000, and paid off all their debts. Everything. The mortgage, the cards, the loans, absolutely everything. When I told them, they literally all started crying together in the living room. My mom hugged me and told me I was her angel, that I was the best daughter in the world, that they would never forget this. My dad had tears in his eyes and told me I was his hero, that he would pay me back somehow. Jessica hugged me and said I was incredible. Brandon was in shock, and Emily kept saying thank you. Even my grandma grabbed my hands with those little old hands of hers and told me, Mija, you're special. This won't be forgotten. The first 2 weeks after that were beautiful, honestly. They called me almost every day, sent me messages thanking me, invited me to dinner every weekend. I felt like I'd done the right thing, that I'd saved my family, and that was what mattered. Yes. My bank account was basically empty, but my family was safe and happy, and that was worth it, right? But then, little by little, things started to change. They didn't call me as often anymore, like it went from every day to every third day, then to once a week. The thank you messages became more spaced out. When I called them, the conversations felt different, more superficial, like they'd already moved on. And, okay, I understand that life goes on and that they couldn't be eternally grateful, but something felt weird. You know what I mean? Like a month and a half after all this, I decided to do something I'd been secretly planning. You see, part of why I took out exactly $70,000 and not more was because I had that little cushion of $3,000 left, and in the weeks after the payment, I'd been working overtime like crazy, basically doubling my workload to recover some money. I put together like $8,000 extra in those weeks. I know, I was killing myself, but I was determined. And with those $11,000 total, I did something I thought would be the perfect gesture. I bought a new car for my parents. It was a used 2020 crossover, super reliable, in excellent condition, because their old car was literally falling apart and my dad needed reliable transportation to get to work. I thought it would be the perfect surprise, the cherry on top to close this whole debt thing. I decided I was going to give it to them the following weekend during family dinner. I was super excited, like a kid at Christmas, practicing in my head how I was going to reveal it to, take them, and imagining their happy faces. But the car was parked in a friend's garage because obviously I couldn't have it in my building without them seeing it. Friday came and I went to my parents' house for dinner. The car was already parked outside, covered with a tarp, and the keys were in my pocket. I walked into the house and immediately noticed the atmosphere was weird. My mom barely greeted me, like a curt hello, and kept cooking. Jessica was in the living room with her laptop and didn't even look up. Brandon was playing video games and completely ignored me. Only Emily smiled at me and gave me a quick hug before going back to her phone. I sat at the table and my grandma came out of her room, saw me, and her face lit up. She'd always been my rock, my favorite person in the whole family. She gave me a strong hug and whispered in my ear, "How are you, Mija? Working a lot?" And I nodded and told her, "Yes, but I was okay." She looked at me with those eyes that seemed to see everything and just squeezed my hand. Dinner was uncomfortable as hell. They passed plates in silence. Nobody asked me how I was. Nobody included me in the conversation. Jessica started talking about a trip she wanted to take to Mexico, and my mom was all excited asking her for details. Brandon mentioned he wanted to buy a new computer for his design business that never took off. Emily talked about needing money for some college books, and there I sat like furniture, listening to them plan to spend money they supposedly didn't have 2 months ago. At one point, Jessica turned to look at me and said, with a super condescending tone, "So, Sophie, still saving every penny, or have you learned to live a little?" And she laughed. She laughed. My mom also let out a little laugh and said, "Oh yes, our Sophie the cheapskate, always so serious with her money." Brandon added, "It must be sad to live like that, counting every dollar." And they all laughed like it was the funniest joke in the world. I froze with the fork in my hand. Really? Really? I had emptied my savings account literally a month and a half ago to save their asses, and they were calling me cheap. I took a deep breath and said, "Well, someone has to be responsible with money, right?" And Jessica looked at me and said, "Ooh, what a martyr, as if you'd done who knows what." My mom said nothing to defend me, just kept eating, and my dad was uncomfortable but didn't say anything either. It was at that moment that I decided I wasn't going to give them the car. Not that night. Not like this. I got up from the table, said I had to leave early because I had pending work, which was a total lie, and I left. My grandma followed me to the door and grabbed my arm. She said, "Sophie, what's wrong?" "I know you," I told her. "Grandma, nothing. I'm just tired." She nodded, but I know she didn't believe me. I got to my car, not the one I was going to give them, and started crying. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. How could they be so ungrateful? So blind? I had given them everything. Literally all my money, my security, my future. And they treated me like it was nothing. Like it was a joke. I sat in that car outside their house for like half an hour until I could calm down enough to drive. The next few days were weird. They didn't call to ask why I'd left, didn't send me messages. Nothing. It was like they didn't even notice I'd been upset. And with each day that passed, I got angrier. The car was still in my friend's garage, the keys were still in my pocket, and I kept thinking, am I really going to give them this after how they treated me? A week later, my mom sent me a message. Family dinner this Sunday, don't miss it. Just like that, like an order. Not, can you come? Not, we'd love to see you. Just an instruction. But I decided to go, because I had to see if they were going to apologize or something. Spoiler alert, they didn't. I arrived on Sunday and the situation was even worse. This time, they didn't even pretend to be cordial. Jessica was complaining that her ex wasn't giving her enough child support and she needed extra money. Brandon interrupted, saying he also needed help to pay for his new online digital marketing course. Seriously, another course he wasn't going to finish? My mom was stressed, saying they needed to fix the roof that had a leak. And my dad just nodded at everything like a robot. I listened to all this in silence, literally unable to believe what I was hearing. And then Jessica looked at me and said, "Sophie, you who are so good with money, couldn't you lend us a few thousand? You know, to help." Like she said it with the most serious face in the world, as if it were the most normal thing to ask me for more money after I'd given them $70,000 2 months ago. Something in me broke at that moment. I got up from the chair and said, "You know what? Yes, I do have something for you. Come outside." They all looked at each other confused, but followed me to the front yard. I walked to where the car was covered with the tarp my friend had brought it that morning, and with one pull I removed the tarp. The car shone in the sun, perfect, beautiful, with a giant red bow I'd put on it. Their faces were total shock. My mom covered her mouth. My dad opened his eyes wide. Jessica, Brandon, and Emily were left speechless. And I took the keys out of my pocket, held them in the air, and said, "This was going to be for you. A gift." Because I thought, after saving your house and paying all your debts, maybe you also deserved a reliable car. But you know what? After how you've treated me the last few weeks, after the comments, the mockery, the absolute lack of respect and consideration, I've decided this car is mine. I'm keeping it. Or maybe I'll give it to someone who really appreciates generous gestures. The silence that followed was brutal. I could hear my heart beating in my ears. My mom was the first to react. "Sophie, you can't be serious. This is ridiculous. We're your family." And I answered her, "Exactly. You're my family. And look how you treat me." Jessica came up furious and yelled, "You're selfish. Just because we made you a couple of jokes now, it turns out we're the bad guys." Brandon added, "You've always been an exaggerator, Sophie. Nobody asked you to pay the debt. You did it because you wanted to." That last part hurt like you have no idea. Because they were right about something. Nobody had put a gun to my head to pay. But they had made me feel like it was my obligation, my duty as the successful daughter to save the family. And now they were throwing it in my face like it had been my whim. My dad tried to mediate. "Sophie, Mija, calm down, we can talk about this." And I said, "No, Dad, there's nothing to talk about. I spent all my savings on you, left myself with nothing, worked like crazy to recover, and you can't even treat me with basic respect. You call me cheap, make fun of me, ask me for more money, like I'm a bank. Deserve this car?" Jessica was red with rage. "I knew you were going to use that against us. That's why I didn't want you to pay anything." And that's when everything started to make sense. Jessica didn't want me to pay the debt because she knew that afterward they would have to be grateful to me, and her ego couldn't handle it. She'd probably been the one who planted the seed of resentment in everyone else. And then something happened that I didn't expect. My grandma, who had been standing at the entrance of the house observing everything, slowly walked to where I was. I thought she was going to scold me, tell me I was being harsh, but instead she stood next to me and said, "Mija, will you take me to your house? I don't want to be here anymore." The shock on everyone's faces was epic. My mom stuttered, "Mom, what are you saying? You can't leave with Sophie, you live here." And my grandma, with impressive calm, said, "I can leave with whoever I want. And Sophie is the only person in this family who has shown heart and brain. So yes, I'm leaving with her. I'm not going to lie." At that moment, I started crying. My grandma had always been my support, but I never thought she would literally choose to leave with me. I helped her get into the new car. Yes, we left in the car that was going to be their gift. And as I started it, I could see my family standing in the yard, completely stunned, not knowing what to do or say. During the drive to my apartment, my grandma grabbed my hand and told me, "Sophie, There's something I need to tell you. Years ago, when your grandfather died, he left me more money than your family knows, and much more. I stayed quiet and saved almost all of it. Your mom and dad have always known I have some money, but they don't know how much. I have close to 7 figures. Sophie. And it's all going to be yours. I almost crashed. 7 figures? My grandma had basically $1 million saved and my family didn't know? She continued. Your grandfather and I were very careful with our money our whole lives. He worked hard, we invested well, and when he died, everything went to me. I never told your parents the exact amount because I knew that if I did, they would come for all of it. And seeing how they treated you after you literally saved their house, I know I made the right decision. We arrived at my apartment, and I set her up in my bedroom. He slept on the couch, obviously. That night, my grandma gave me an old notebook where she had all the details of her accounts, investments, and properties I didn't know she had. It was surreal. While my family had made me feel like the villain for not giving them a car after giving them $70,000, my grandma was entrusting me with her entire fortune. Of course, the peace lasted like 2 days. The messages started. First from my mom. Sophie, give me back your grandma right now. You can't kidnap her like this. Then Jessica. You're a manipulator. What did you tell grandma to make her leave with you? Brandon. This is low even for you, Sophie. Only Emily hadn't sent anything, which was weird. I ignored all the messages. My grandma was happy in my apartment. We went for walks, cooked together, watched movies. It was like having an adorable roommate instead of a toxic family. But I knew it wouldn't last, that eventually they would have to confront me. And boy did they. One afternoon, like 5 days after the incident, there was a knock on my door. It was Jessica. She had that superiority face she always put on when she thought she was going to win an argument. She told me, "We need to talk, Sophie. You and I know this is ridiculous. Just apologize to the family, returned Grandma, and we can forget all this." And I laughed. I literally laughed in her face. I told her, "Apologize? For what, Jessica? For not letting you treat me like garbage? For having dignity? Leave." She didn't leave. Instead, she took out her phone and called someone. 2 minutes later, my mom arrived, then my dad, then Brandon. They all showed up at my building like it was an intervention or something. The security guard called me, and I told him to let them up because, whatever, it was time to end this once and for all. They entered my apartment like they owned the place. My grandma came out of the bedroom, and when she saw them, her face changed. She wasn't happy to see them. It was more like disappointment. My mom went straight to the point. "Mom, stop playing games. Let's go home. You belong with us, not with Sophie." And my grandma, with that firm voice she used when she was really angry, said, "I'm not going anywhere, and you need to hear what I'm going to tell you." She took out the notebook she'd given me and put it on the table. She told them exactly what she'd told me, that she had money, a lot of money, and that it was all going to be for Sophie. My family's faces transformed from confusion to shock to indignation. Jessica was the first to explode. "What? That's not fair. We're your grandchildren too. I'm the oldest." My mom started crying manipulative tears, I'm sure, saying, "How can you do this to us, Mom? We're your family." And my grandma, unfazed, said, "Sophie has shown more character and responsibility than all of you put together. She paid $70,000 in debts that weren't hers because you couldn't manage your money. She worked herself to exhaustion to recover. And you, what did you do? You treated her with contempt. You called her cheap. You made fun of her. You asked her for more money like she was an ATM. And now you want my money too? No. It's over." Brandon yelled, "This is Sophie's manipulation. She brainwashed you." I laughed bitterly. "Of course, Brandon, because Grandma can't make her own decisions, right? There always has to be someone manipulating because it's never your fault." My dad tried to calm me. "Sophie, Mija, please. I understand you're upset, but this is too far." And I told him, "Too far? Too far? Dad, I gave everything for this family and you acted like it was nothing. Too far was when you decided my generosity was weakness." Then Jessica did something that changed everything forever. She came up to me, with that malicious look I'd never seen on her, and said, You know what, Sophie? Since we're going to destroy this family, let me tell you something you've gone your whole life without knowing. Dad isn't your dad. Mom had an affair like 29 years ago, and you're the result. We all know it, everyone except you. So maybe that's why they've never treated you like real family, because you're not. The world stopped. Everything went into slow motion. I looked at my mom, expecting her to say Jessica was lying, that she was crazy, but my mom just went pale and looked away. I looked at my dad, at Michael, the man who had raised me, who had taken care of me, who had taught me to ride a bike, and he had tears in his eyes but didn't deny anything. And that's when something inside me died. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just felt this intense cold run through my whole body. I walked to the door of my apartment, opened it completely, and with a voice that didn't sound like mine said, "Out, everyone, now." Jessica tried to say something else, but I yelled, "Out! Get out of my house right now or I'm calling the police." They left, one by one, leaving like dogs with their tails between their legs. My grandma stayed, of course, and when they closed the door, she hugged me while I finally broke down. I cried for hours, not just about the revelation that Michael wasn't my biological father, but about all the accumulated betrayal, about years of feeling different without knowing why, about having given everything for people who apparently never saw me as one of them. The following days were a fog. I didn't answer calls, didn't read messages. My grandma stayed with me, taking care of me, cooking for me, making sure I ate and slept. She told me she had known about my true origin, but it never seemed relevant to her because to her, I was her granddaughter, regardless of who my biological father was. That gave me some comfort, but not much. Like a week later, I received a letter in my mail. It was from Michael, with his shaky handwriting, asking to see me, saying we needed to talk, that he could explain everything. The letter said we would meet at a cafe near my apartment on Friday at 3 p.m. I decided to go. I needed answers. I needed to understand why he'd hidden this from me my whole life. Friday came. I went to the cafe, ordered a coffee I didn't drink, and sat waiting. I waited half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour. Michael never showed up. I called him. It went straight to voicemail. I messaged him. Nothing. It was like the letter had never been real, like it was one last cruel move from my family to make me feel worse. Or maybe he just didn't have the courage to face me. I'll never know. What did happen was that the next day Emily called me. I answered because she was the only one who hadn't been horrible to me. She told me, with a trembling voice, "Sophie, I need you to know that I didn't agree with anything that happened. Jessica told me about Grandma's money and they're all furious, making plans to sue you or I don't know what, but I just wanted to tell you that I admire what you did, that I understand why you left, and that I'm sorry. I didn't say anything at that dinner when they treated you badly. I was scared, but I should have defended you." I cried with that call. It was the first genuine thing I'd heard from my family in weeks. I thanked Emily and told her she would always be welcome in my life if she wanted, but that I couldn't have contact with the rest. She understood. Another 2 weeks passed and my grandma gave me more news. Turns out my grandfather, before he died, had established a trust fund specifically in my name. Nobody knew because it was under certain complex legal terms, but now that I was 28, I could access it. It was a considerable sum, not millionaire, but enough that I would never have to worry about emergency money again. My grandfather, somehow, had known I was going to need that security. And then came the final confrontation. Jessica showed up at my work. How did she get the address? No idea. She waited in the lobby until I came down and blocked my path. She told me, "We need to talk, Sophie. This has gone too far." I tried to dodge her, but she continued, "Look, I know I hurt you with what I said, but it was the truth, and you deserve to know it. Now, about Grandma's money, we all deserve a part. It's our family too." And something in me just broke in a different way. Not from sadness, but from absolute clarity. I told her, "You know what, Jessica? You're right about something. This money, this car, this life I've built, it's not for you. It never was for you. It was my mistake to think that personal sacrifice meant family love. But I learned something. Family isn't just blood. It's respect, it's reciprocity, it's loyalty. And you didn't give me any of that. So yes, I'm keeping everything. The car is mine, Grandma is my responsibility now, and whatever money she decides to give me, I'll accept with gratitude. And you, Jessica, and the rest of that family are no longer my problem. It gave me so much satisfaction to see her face of disbelief. And she tried to keep arguing, but I just turned around and left. That was the last time I spoke to anyone in my family, apart from Emily, who sends me occasional messages, and my grandma. Obviously, it's been like 3 months since all this. The calls and messages stopped like a month ago. I guess they finally understood I wasn't going to give in. My grandma is happy living with me. I got everything legally arranged for her to have medical care and comfort. She insists on paying part of the rent with her money. Obviously, I don't allow it, but she appreciates that I offer. I use the new car every day, and every time I get in, I feel a weird mix of sadness and satisfaction. Sadness because it represents everything that could have been different, and satisfaction because it represents choosing myself for the first time in my life. My grandfather's trust fund is helping me rebuild my savings, and I've almost recovered what I spent on my family. Emily came to visit us 2 weeks ago. She saw my apartment, we spent the day together, and it was nice to see that at least one person from that family had some decency. She told me things at the house are tense, that Jessica and Brandon are still angry, that my mom cries a lot, for a change, and that Michael, well, Dad, or whatever I should call him now, has basically become a ghost in his own house. Part of me feels sorry, a very small part, but most of me feels it's exactly what they deserve. The truth about my biological father still hurts when I think about it, which is like every day. If I'm honest, I don't know who he is. My mom never contacted me to explain, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to know. Michael raised me. That's a fact. But the fact that he hid something so fundamental about my identity for almost 29 years is something I don't know if I can forgive. Maybe someday, but not today. What I do know is this. For the first time in my life, I'm putting my needs first. I'm not working myself to exhaustion to save anyone else. I'm not emptying my accounts out of family obligation. I'm not accepting crumbs of respect and gratitude. I'm building a life where the people around me genuinely value me, not for what I can give them financially, but for who I am. My grandma told me something last week that I can't get out of my head. We were having dinner, just the two of us, and out of nowhere she told me, "Sophie, the best gift you can give yourself is the freedom to say no." For decades, I said yes to everything. Yes to taking care of everyone. Yes to being the good one. Yes to keeping secrets that weren't mine. And I made myself invisible in my own life. Don't make that mistake. You already did what you had to do for them. Now do. Something for you? So that's what I'm doing. I'm planning to finally buy my own apartment with the money I recovered. I'm going to therapy to process all this about my father's origin and the toxic family dynamic. I'm learning to set boundaries without feeling guilt. And you know what? For the first time in years, I'm sleeping well. I don't know if my family will ever understand what they did, or if I'll ever receive a genuine apology. Honestly, I don't expect anything from them anymore. Emily is welcome in my life. My grandma is obviously my priority now, but the rest can go their way without me. I'll go mine. And that car that was going to be a gift, that blessed car that caused all this drama, I drive it every day to my work, to my therapy sessions, to a life I'm building with my own rules. And every time I start the engine, I remind myself that I made the right decision. I finally chose myself. And that's priceless.